This week, Joe Gray, senior investigator at SpyCloud, and the OSINT Nation, where we talk OSINT and social engineering. Next up, Kyle Avery, a penetration tester for Black Hills Information Security, will delve into offensive operations with Mythic. In the security news, Accenture gets lockbit. $600 million in cryptocurrency is stolen, and they started returning some of it. Lee and Jeff's data is leaked, among other senior citizens. Authentication bypass via path traversal. Downgrade attacks. Apple's backdoor. Super duper secure mode. Redefining end-to-end encryption and how that doesn't work out. Pen testers file suit against Dallas County Sheriff's Department. Fingerprinting Windows. And double secret quadruple extortion. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Can you pinpoint the 10 security gaps in your attack surface that account for 90% of your risk? It's impossible using a combination of scanners, pen tests, breach and attack simulation tools, and manual processes. But attackers can find your gaps. They perform recon and target the weaknesses with the best return. The Psycognito platform sees your external attack surface the way attackers do, eliminating blind spots. Powered by a global bot network, the Psycognito platform prioritizes your highest risk security gaps, integrates with existing workflows, and reduces operational costs. Visit securityweekly.com/Psycognito.
That's your cue, Larry. Oh, hey. Wow. It's one of those days. Well, let me introduce you to the star of our show. Yeah. A man who should be hornswoggled and dipped in turds, Mr. Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Believe it or not, it's episode number 706. Being recorded today, August 12th, 2021, right here in G-Unit Studios in lovely Rhode Island, where my co-host, Mr. Larry Pesci, fell asleep there momentarily at the top of the show. It's okay, though. Yeah. It happens.
No, I think something in the Matrix changed because the program used to show up there and I used to see myself.
Oh.
And like,
it showed up on my program screen. I was
see,
like,
but I can't. Larry, that's you. I can't see out of that side.
You can't see that side. Oops. But we're here.
Yep, that we are.
Also here with us remotely, Mr. Lee Neely is with us. Lee, welcome.
Oh, he's over there.
He's over there.
Okay.
Yes. Hey. Looking good from Idaho, and it's fortunately the air conditioner's working inside because it's a little warm outside.
Yeah, it's warm here too. Yes, it's gonna be a hot one. Speaking of hot ones, Mr. Tyler Robinson is here with us. Tyler, welcome.
Ooh, this is gonna be a long show. 2 parts of this. Larry with a patch for an eye and hopefully not a peg for a... Never mind.
It's good to have you here.
First date with me, Hook.
Oh, we do have some announcements. On August 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, learn how to implement cloud security that actually works. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast. That one is sponsored by Tanium. It'll feature myself, Adrian, and Ryan from Tanium. If you missed our previously recorded webcast or technical trainings, they're available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Joe Gray is the creator of Advanced Persistent Security, an InfoSec blog and podcast, and the first winner of the DerbyCon Social Engineering Capture the Flag competition, and a black badge recipient. He joins us today to discuss his upcoming book, Practical Social Engineering and OSINT. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you here, my friend. How have you been?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Now, my first question, is it OSINT or OSINT?
I don't know. What did I say? Did I get it wrong?
You said it both ways.
I did?
You did.
Ah, crap.
Honestly, I don't have a solid answer for that. I've heard it pronounced both ways.
No,
so
we've debated this, Joe. We've debated this. OS is operating system. OSINT is open source intelligence gathering.
I do subscribe to the train of thought that it is pronounced OSINT, but yes. I have heard people say OSINT.
Yeah, because when I see the capital OS, I want to say OS. That's like, cause that it trips me up still. Sorry.
Exactly.
We'll get there. We'll get there. So what made you want to write a book? Glutton for Punishment?
Glutton for Punishment, and it was one of those things where I had given talks all over the place about a variety of topics, and I had kind of pooled everything that I had put together, and I was like, this is probably enough material to write a book. So I should pitch it. And I pitched to one publisher, and we couldn't come to terms on it. And then I came to my senses and talked to No Starch, and here we are in the final stages of getting everything lined up and getting it ready for print and release.
Very nice.
What makes it different from other works on social engineering?
This one, we talk about some of the psychological concepts of it, but I spend a little bit of time in the book actually talking about OSINT and the ethics of social engineering, kind of the idea of just because you can doesn't mean you should. And then the book also, towards the end, we have the offensive section of the book where it talks through, here's how you put together a fish, here's some things for some vishing, here are some exercises to improve, referencing some things like some of Chris Hadnagy's work, some of the work of Dr. Cialdini from the psychology world. And then the final part of the book is more on the defensive side, to the effect of how we could go about defending against things. I talk about things like SPF, DChem, DMARC, but I stress more than anything that you should be testing your people, for one, but not exclusively your people. Something I talk about is don't rely solely on people to be your detection mechanisms, just as you should not rely solely on technology. And the third thing with it is you really need to look at your processes in terms of someone receives a fish or someone clicks a fish. You should have a defined process that it has been tested, whether it be via simulations, pen tests, or whatever, that allows the person to know what to do, because no two organizations are the same. Organization A, if someone clicks on a fish, they may want them to completely disconnect the computer from the network. Cool, but we have to think that we may be talking to non-technical people. And in stuff like that, I even go as far as to possibly even recommend using a specific colored network cable to say, just unplug the yellow cable. But then more explicitly, who do you call? Like, don't say call security. I tested that in a previous role. I had someone outside the organization send some stuff and it said call security. And the gate guards hated me for a week because that's who everybody called. Instead of calling information security, they called physical security. So give a specific phone number, give a specific email address, something to be able to defend against, to get your incident response process in action sooner rather than later, because you do not want to detect an incident when you're being extorted for some form of cryptocurrency.
I like the focus on process and procedures, because I feel like people get hung up on, well, we just need a training and awareness program. And I'm like, so is it a training program or is it an awareness program? Or are you just going to send simulated fishes and then send people to training or awareness? Because I feel like I feel like there's some flaws in this process, Joe.
There are, and it's something that you need to look at from a multi-pronged approach. You should be testing your people. You should be testing them with those simulated automated style phishing products that just send the things that are very easy to detect, that pretty much anybody can point out. But then I also go as far as to recommend actually bringing in a pen tester and having someone do something manually, so that you get the people get a little bit more experience in terms of what an actual adversary may do. And with the processes, like I said, no two organizations are the same. They may all be using PyCurl, but their points of contact, their language, lingo, culture, and just the way the organization is structured may vary. So using that example of call security, have a phone number. It could be a hotline number, it could be a help desk number, something, or send the email as an attachment, and you have to provide instructions on how to do that to this email address. Or if all else fails, get up and walk to this person's cubicle, and this is where they sit. And that way you have the process, because you could have all of the right training, all of the right awareness. You could have been doing the simulated fishes. They work well. You could have an incident response plan that will pass any compliance check, and the process itself be broken. There could be a disconnect between how something is detected and how it gets moved to the next stage or escalated. And I'm a bigger fan of testing the processes almost as much as the technology and the people, if not more, to be entirely honest.
Yeah,
because processes are really what breaks. To the point of something you're going to talk about in the news, the process for authorizing physical pen tests for courthouses in certain states is probably broken. And that's something that, while the pen testers in that particular scenario, they were successful in what they were trying to do, the bigger picture is they highlighted a significant process flaw between the state's court system and that particular county, and how they interact and perform authorization and notification.
So I had a question for you. So I mean, I agree about testing processes and things, particularly if it's stuff you don't do very often. But to what degree of rigor? I mean, I suspect if those guys hadn't tried that pen test on the courthouse, we'd never have known there was a problem. Everybody would have assumed that the person that said it was cool was on the right. So I'm extracting that to, how far do we go? I mean, at the one extreme, you're kicking the cords out in the data center. The other, you're sitting around a table just looking at paper. What's the right?
That's going to vary from one organization to another, and I would even say within a particular organization, it's going to vary from one team to another. Because as we look at modern threats, things like business email compromise and things to that effect, people working in things like HR, accounting, maybe even the InfoSec team and the C-suite, they have a different risk profile than someone that's in a call center with very limited access, or even someone on the help desk. So one organization, it could be dictated by their management's risk appetite. It could be directed by the industry or vertical that they are in, something to that effect that's going to say, well, there's a high probability that we could potentially suffer something. And, it's all about planning. It's all about forecasting. You could go that route, but then even within your organization, okay, what could happen if someone successfully phished or vished someone in finance or accounting? How much money could we lose? What processes do we have in place? And for the more sensitive roles like HR, accounting, the C-suite, and depending on the type of organization, it could even be parts of engineering. What additional steps do we want to put them through? And from the training perspective, that's why I advocate you may have some generic training that everyone takes, but you also need to have role-specific training that would actually address the specific problems that someone in HR or accounting may face. Because for HR, one of the easy pretexts to use when trying to perform a social engineering engagement, if you're looking at someone in HR, would be, I'm a confused job seeker, or I've previously interviewed, or I would like more information. And that's something that HR deals with quite frequently on the outside of the company. So having specific training and making them aware of particular things that could occur for what they are most likely to face. The probability
Joe, in the HR example, I think we can use technology, right? Because typically the threat vector there is HR needs to read someone's resume, right? We can give them a safe place. We can give them a safe place to do that. There's technology to solve that problem. When you talk about business email compromise, as we so call it, basically attackers are looking to steal money. That's a different set of processes and
absolutely.
awareness, right? Because basically what I tell people is, look, have a process and procedures around when you transfer money. You need to make sure you do validation steps throughout that process, like whatever it is. A lot of organizations, like in a certain circumstance, they're like, we need a fax, right? And that trips up an attacker, right? Or it doesn't get done unless I call on the phone, or in your example, walk to someone's cubicle. If you're working from home, you call the person and be like, is this authorized, right? There needs to be extra validation checks in there, because we know people are going to be really crafty in social engineering and do stuff, so there needs to be some guardrails.
And that's absolutely correct. And to your point regarding the HR example, while we can solve a lot of the stuff that HR may face with technology with regards to like reviewing resumes and stuff, but what happens when the phone rings, right? Because vishing, if you combine vishing with other forms of social engineering, whether it be phishing or baiting or anything else, you can get a whole new level of success that you never expected based on the voice thing, because you don't have those technological implementations to be able to screen anything in advance. So that's where that additional training and building the appropriate processes for releasing specific types of information or information about particular roles or hiring events or whatever, that's or even benefits, that's where that could come into play. Because, I mean, if I were going to do a social engineering engagement on a company, I may call and use vishing to talk to someone in HR and claim to be a new employee, or just had a qualifying event to have to change my insurance, and get HR to tell me, okay, well, this is who the insurance company is or whatever. And then from there, that gives me quite a bit of leeway with what I could do in terms of what types of fish I could send and what type of verbiage I may want to use in those phishing emails.
Joe, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you find there's any difference in susceptibility at larger versus smaller, where you have, in a larger, you have more separation of duty and you have, more resources behind potentially training and stuff. Or is it just that it doesn't matter because everybody's so busy?
It varies from one organization to another. In the past, some of the engagements I've done have been against very large companies or very small companies. I've been able to walk right through the door with large companies just as often as I've had the door slammed in my face, and the same applies for small companies. So a lot of it really hinges upon company culture and, to some degree, the industry and whatever they're subjected to. Like if you're dealing with someone in government contracting, there's a good chance that you may get shut down a little bit quicker than you expect with that, or at least that's been my experience.
Other than cost, are there really truly differences in effectiveness of security awareness programs? Like, oh, I got, simulated fish, now I got to go do this training or awareness thing. Is there like a really big difference, you think, in effectiveness of, because there's like a dozen or more probably, right, companies that would provide that for you?
I think it depends on the company's tone and how they implement it, and basically how they are able to present and market it to the employees. Because if management and those who are administering the program talk about, oh, this is a necessary evil, we've got to do this, it's an every year thing, people aren't going to take it seriously. They're not going to take it to heart. Whereas if management comes out and they're, I don't want to say passionate about it, but they're optimistic about it, but not like Richard Simmons level optimistic about it, then there's a higher chance of adopting it amongst the employees. They're more apt to take it seriously. But even taking that further, something I found that seems to work is, instead of
Richard Simmons have a security awareness video? Because if so, I'd watch that. That'd be hilarious.
I don't think he does. But
wonderful.
Well, there is a company, like, what's the insurance? There's an insurance company that has the guy that's always getting hurt. And then there's an awareness company. I don't remember which one, but they've got like a funny video in that same vein. Like it's the bad employee that always gets hacked, and he's like, standing over people's shoulders going, should definitely click down that link. You should definitely download that attachment. That link is totally safe. It's evil.com, but it's totally safe. Like, I think if you inject some humor in it, I think back to your point, you run the risk of like people not taking it seriously, but it being entertaining. And I forget which company has that program. Well, I think it's kind of cool, right? But also what you're saying is it should match the culture of your organization as well.
It should. And the other thing that comes from this is it should. What I found to be especially useful is instead of saying this is how you protect the company's resources, because a lot of the training and the videos, they come from the lens of do this to keep the company safe. That's fine and good. And at the end of the day, we do want to keep the company safe. But what I've seen to be just as effective, if not more effective, is teach someone how to keep themselves safe. Frame it from a perspective less of the company's investing in this to protect the company. The company, instead, you want to say the company is investing in this so that you can keep you and your family, specifically your children or your grandchildren, safe. These are tidbits you can take home. And at that point, you start to plant seeds in people's mind and you start to help them develop a better security hygiene, if you will, or security culture, a personal security culture. And then at that point, it starts to become muscle memory and they start doing the things, people start doing the things at home that you want them to do at work to be secure.
Yeah. And I like to call out sponsors that did this. They just happen to be sponsors, and they both happen to do the same. They don't solve the same exact problem, but they approach like the licensing and the strategy the same. Material security does your inbox security, so that like if you go retrieve a document from the past, you have to do a two-factor thing. So if someone compromises your email, they can't just go read all the sensitive stuff. It's just one thing that they do. And then there's Pixum, which is a browser plugin that prevents you basically from getting phished. And I apologize, I don't remember the technical like differentiators of that one, but it was really cool. It is really cool. Both of those companies, when you buy a license for an individual within your organization, they allow that person to install it on their personal systems as well, knowing that attackers not like the pen testers, right? Attackers are going to go after your Gmail account, your home account, and whatever. When we saw that with the DNC hack, it was someone's Gmail account. I can't remember the person's name. I always flake on the person's name. But they went after the person's Gmail account, right? Because you often kind of mix work and personal as well. Mm-hmm. So, and Joe, back to your point, I think it's important, not just having tools that extend to people's personal lives, but having the awareness and training extend to their personal lives as well.
Right. So, oftentimes, like, think about the password advice that we've had over, say, the last 5 or 6 years, right? Thou shalt have a password that's X characters long. It must contain 3 of the 4 typefaces, and it can't be one of your last X number of passwords, right?
And passwords are like underwear. Remember that campaign?
Yeah, exactly. So we preach that, and as security people, sometimes we get a little bit too wrapped up in that aspect of it. And when we start talking to the non-technical people, they kind of feel like we're browbeating them. And oftentimes we don't really explain why it's important to have a password of that complexity. So explaining why, as opposed to it's harder for hackers to break it. That's not an explanation. That's just words. But saying, okay, well, the longer it is, basically, here's how this is going to work. Briefly, here's how brute force works. Here's how this works, blah, blah. And I mean, possibly even a demonstration that could even help as well. But explaining why we're saying you need to have a password that's that complex, and then turning around and saying, oh, and by the way, you need to have a different password on every single application and website and resource that you use. Great. By the way, here's a password manager that you can use.
Yeah.
And then say, oh, and by the way, if you want to use it at home, like the 2 products you mentioned, I don't know of any of the major password managers that do this now, but you can use it at home in your personal machine as well. So
yeah, I was wondering how that works with password managers. Actually, like if you are a user of one product, right, for your personal, and then your company adopts it, how does that work? And then also, like, what if you're using product A, but your company's adopting product B? Is there a migration path so you can all be on the same? So I don't need two password managers.
I don't know about the migration portion, but I do know that if you use the same password manager as your employer, basically you can just have two separate vaults. So you could have your work vault on your work or personal computer or whichever, and your personal one, either or, whatever you're comfortable with. At least with one of them. I'm not sure about all of them, but I am aware of one that allows that. And that's actually something I was going to recommend is, worst case scenario, if you have to, just create another folder within your vault and say, this is my personal accounts. And I mean, it's problematic because what happens when you leave unexpectedly, or the vendor changes, or you're terminated. But
yeah, that was that was going through my head too. Like, what happens if I change jobs? Some of us change jobs, right? And now, how do I get my password vaults back? Like,
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can back them up.
Migrations too.
What's that, Tyler?
There's migrations and exports for each of the password vendors.
Yeah.
1Password, LastPass, they all migrate and integrate between each other pretty synonymously. And there's even recovery and backups. You can migrate certain vaults to a different email account if you are changing jobs in a certain grace period. So there's definitely ways to solve that.
Yeah,
And
Joe, we were talking about
that,
too,
though,
like, if you had $100, what would you do to improve the security of a company? And this ties into a conversation. I had to really think about my answer. And Adrian and Tyler on ESW really liked they liked my answer, and I was like, I'd buy $100 worth of beer or alcohol, and I'd sit everyone down and I'd have a conversation with them about security. And I'm like, I'd probably hit on three things, and we've hit on some of them, right? Like, you need a password vault, and here's why. You need two-factor authentication on all your accounts, and here's why. And you probably should have a PIN on your SIM code. Like, you could debate number 3 there. I think that really stems from, I've been looking, hearing about SIM card swapping attacks more and more. And it's really heinous, but, certainly the first two be a good conversation over $100 worth of booze, in my opinion.
Actually, your conversation reminded me of something. We had a friend who's really smart, and he was working at a company, going through their InfoSec training. Not a dumb guy. The penny didn't drop until he'd been taking it for like over 5 years, that it was, the relevance had never connected. The sitting there with a beer, you're getting past the formality. You're relaxing people so they can actually understand what the hell the point is, why it matters. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just shocked when he said it took him, like, I think it was 7 years for it to really sink in. I'm like, whoa! But it's the same problem you're solving. It was awesome.
Absolutely. And actually, Paul, to your point there, with $100 budget, what would I do? I would probably buy one of these for demonstration purposes. It's an NVIDIA Jetson Nano, so it's like a Raspberry Pi, but it's got the NVIDIA GPU on it. So you can use Hashcat, you can do like all the machine learning stuff, and you can demonstrate a computer of this size costs less than $100, and this is what it could do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't actually know about that little hardware device. It's gonna be on my
there's
shopping
the
list.
NVIDIA Jetson line. There's, I think, 4 or 6 different models. Last year, the presentation that I gave at a lot of the conferences, the Decepticon bot, the one where it reads a certain Twitter account's tweets and then uses a recurrent neural network to generate tweets on their behalf. It was written to run on one of these. I started out in a virtual machine and it just bogged my system down. So I moved it over to a Jetson Nano, and I put the recurrent neural network through TensorFlow and vastly sped up not only the process itself, but the accuracy of the actual bot. And then after I was done with all of the testing for that, I played with Hashcat in it quite a bit, and it was for something under $100. It did an exceptional job of cracking some passwords.
That's pretty cool. Any other tips on defense?
Yeah, really, you've just got to stay ahead of things. And honestly, on defense, something that is often overlooked, and I think may be the most important thing, would be have someone outside your organization do an OSINT assessment against your organization, because that's what the adversaries are working from. Sure, there's some stuff with like the low-hanging fruit. Okay, I found them on Shodan, I found them here, I found them there, there's this. But if you've got someone who's really trying to be persistent and someone who's a little bit more advanced, trying to really gain access to that organization, the amount of stuff they can find via OSINT, and I'm not just talking like employee social media. I'm referring more to things that you have in your DNS, like text records. Do they still need to be there? What kind of information are you giving away regarding your email platform? Like what can someone learn about your organization and your architecture from MX records? I mean, I can find out who your mail provider or your mail filtering service is from that. If I can't find out from MX, which I can, but if I couldn't, there's DMARC as well. The DMARC record will give that information away. And then the amount of stuff that you can find through passive subdomain enumeration, job postings, the number of times that I've looked through job postings for an organization that I've been investigating, and I've seen specific software versions that are vulnerable mentioned in the job postings. That's a big one. And then it should be incorporated within your training to the employees, but to some degree, the corporate social media and high-level employee social media. And that's the reason why I say that that someone external to the organization should be the one to do it. Because if you have an investigator that goes through and conducts that assessment, they can look through all of your employees' social media that's public. They can find the things of relevance that could actually be harmful to the business without finding out personal things or getting too invasive about employee habits. And it lessens the probability of a potential manager using the data to be abusive to employees. So that's pretty important. And then just general OSINT, like data breach stuff. Traditionally, when I've came across like passwords, like using something like dHashed or one of the other tools out there, whether it be on an Onion site or the Clear Web, I typically ask the question of an organization, do you want to know whose passwords have been breached, or do you want to know which passwords have been breached? I won't give up the password as it's associated with a person, because I have no assurance that the person receiving this information or someone with access to that information may not try to log into someone's personal accounts or do other abusive activities with it. So having a consultant to do that type of engagement allows them to be the filter, not the pump, and give the business more of what is actually valuable that can actually make a difference within the business. Because if a lot of businesses would just be more vague with some of the stuff they put out there, they could greatly enhance their security. The number of times that I've just done Google Dorks or looked through a few websites and found highly sensitive information about a company on the company's website, not even on like S3 buckets or DigitalOcean spaces. It's unreal. And a lot of times the companies don't even realize it's there. It wasn't supposed to be there. It got there. They didn't know it was there. So having someone come through and do the investigation, I would say annually at least. Better would be 6 months, and ideally would probably even be quarterly, to see what's new, what's changed, what's gone, what's still there, what can be found. Because that's what's going to lead to what I call the context for the contact. And that could lead, like the amount of information someone could collect using OSINT techniques could lead to highly focused and aggressive social engineering, but it could also save a lot of time in red team activities or unauthorized red team activities, just the straight malicious side of it. If they're seeing job postings for a vulnerable version of SolarWinds, then that saves them from having to run Nmap and get detected by a SOC.
Well, I also think that's a valuable tool for the end user's awareness as well, because the end user knowing that the information is accessible, I think arms them to be better equipped to handle social engineering. Because I think most users are like, oh, well, the only way they would know that is if it really were my bank or whatever, But when they realize that this information can be discovered, I think it better equips the user to handle the situation.
It does. And in that case, when the business is actually talking to the employees and debriefing it, they should say something to the effect of, we did not want to personally invade your privacy. We want to maintain the right relationships. So we hired a firm to do this type of engagement. This was the scope of it. And the information that you're being provided was collected by someone else. And we asked them to only give us stuff that is relevant to the business. We didn't ask for anything personal about you. We didn't get any of your passwords or any of that kind of stuff. Just as a level of reassurance to try to maintain a certain level of trust between the company and the employees. But because one of the worst things that could happen is the employees start to believe that the company is trying to be Big Brother.
So simulated phish in addition to penetration testing and an awareness program.
Plus the proactive external OSINT.
Yeah.
Because the OSINT, you could do the OSINT as part of either the pen testing or the social engineering, or you could just do it independently. And there's really, there are pros and cons to doing it independently or as part of something else. Personally, I would say probably do a thorough full scope OSINT engagement first, and then leverage that information as part of the social engineering and as part of the pen testing. Because let's face it, OSINT is pretty much, if we want to look at, the ethical hacking process, OSINT is the passive reconnaissance phase. So pen testers often already do some of that stuff anyway. They're not looking at the same level of verbosity that some of the OSINT investigators are, but they're still looking for a lot of the same information.
Do you find that if you just did the OSINT investigation without the other steps, that you'd get I can accept the risk of all that, it's not that bad, nobody can do anything with it? Or does it carry weight on its own?
It varies. And from a professional sense, with most of the engagements that I've been involved with, they've actively sought out the organization that I was working for and doing the engagement. So they were already concerned about it. So they took it to heart very, very heavily. On the other side, though, when I've found things and I've submitted either as a bug bounty or like via disclosure.io or just through the appropriate responsible disclosure methods, it's feast or famine. They're either like, oh, thank you very much, we're so appreciative, or shoo fly, get out of here, we don't care at all. So I stopped submitting it on bug bounties because on both BugCrowd and HackerOne, I had submitted several things that I had found that I considered to be like, I wouldn't give it like a priority one because, it's not like a remote code execution, but I would give it a priority one OSINT, which I would probably say maybe like a priority 3 otherwise. But I've submitted things and they're like, yeah, this doesn't meet the requirements of the bug bounty. I was like, well, I understand that. I'm telling you this information. And then it ends up getting marked NA, and then that hurts my reputation score. So I just stopped using the platforms. And if I have something, I just directly go to the organization now so that I don't have to worry about my reputation score going down.
Flipping to the red team side, I had a question. It'll come back to me because you talked for a while when I had the question in my head, and now I forgot it. Oh, you said in your book that you had tips for getting better at social engineering. But are there works that we should read? I know Nagy has interviews like a lot of interesting guests. on psychology and other such topics. Like, what are your tips for getting better at social engineering?
So I talk about the books, a lot of the same stuff that you would hear from Chris Hadnagy and company. And it's, read his work with caution, read Frank Abagnale and Kevin Mitnick's work, consider some of the other psychology works, and then listen to podcasts like his and other psychology-focused podcasts. But I talk a lot about, like, how to improve your interpersonal communications. Like, for example, go strike up a conversation with some random stranger and have an objective of a piece of information you want to get. And it doesn't have to be anything invasive, but have something that you ultimately want to lead up to getting the person to tell you. And have those conversations with strangers, because when you're doing like the vishing stuff, there's really only one way to get better at it, and that's to do it. And if it's harder to talk to people face to face than it is on the phone, or at least to me. So if you can go and strike up conversations with random strangers and extract small tidbits of benign information out of them, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to massage the conversation when you're on the phone in a higher pressure environment, where you really need to excel and be successful. You're already used to it. And then I talk about things like take a public speaking class, take a technical writing class, possibly join Toastmasters, present at your local B-sides or DEFCON groups or what have you. And, be active in the community, be on Twitter, be on LinkedIn, that kind of the general stuff that I would tell anyone going into InfoSec. But you need to be able to communicate. And the thing is, with regards to like social engineering, you need to be able to write those technical reports. So a technical writing class is great, but then you also need to be able to adjust your tone so that when you're writing those phishing emails, you're not sounding like you're writing a technical report, or you're not sounding like a robot. So unless that's part of your pretext, because there are pretexts out there that you could use where you purposely make mistakes. So that's a lot of the big stuff. And then the other thing is, I tell people, if you have access to like a college library online or anything, either as an alumni or as a student at like a community college or whatever, go and read what's in the psychology and sociology journals, especially as it relates to three specific terms, and that's persuasion, manipulation, and influence. And then even if you're more interested in social engineering than you are OSINT, still study up on your OSINT, because the better OSINT is going to make better social engineering. You're going to have a more informed approach coming in. For example, if you were doing an engagement against Walmart or Disney, with proper OSINT, you would know that Walmart's employees are called associates and Disney's employees are called cast members. If you call them an employee on a call or in an email, you're done. You're going to get discovered far too quickly. So don't discount the OSINT, and go read the appropriate works. Obviously, anything written by Michael Basil, Chris Kubeka has good stuff. There's other good stuff out there. With OSINT, there's a lot of blogs about it at any given time. Be active. I run my own Discord server. There are, I think, about 5 or 6 other OSINT Discord servers that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are more, but be active. And then, of course, your typical social media event stuff for that as well.
What's your favorite kind of meat to smoke?
It's funny you should say that, because right after I got out of the hospital last week, I bought a pellet smoker. And I decided that I was going to smoke a copious amount of St. Louis style ribs.
Nice.
So as of right now, that's my favorite, but literally the only things I have put in the pellet smoker have been steak, ribs, burgers, and corn on the cob. I'm conflicted as to what's next, whether it will be wings, beer can chicken, brisket, or pork butt.
Why not all? Why not all of them?
I can only eat so much, guys.
That's true. That's true.
I'm trying not to gain the weight that I lost back.
This is true. So which pellet smoker did you get?
It is the Pit Boss Lockhart. It's the one from Walmart. It's got the smoker with the grill function, the charbroiler in it, and then it's got it. It still smokes, but it doesn't get up to the same temperature. The 4 racks above it, so it's kind of like a heating area as well. And it holds 40 pounds of pellets.
I like the pellet smokers because it's much easier.
Yeah,
like, you know, you got, especially if you got kids at home and other stuff going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's so much easier than babysitting a traditional smoker and having to adjust to keep it right between 225 and 250. And then, you know, when you open it up to flip something over or spray it with vinegar, then you've got to readjust the airflow, and then you can only leave it adjusted for so long, because if you don't, then it's going to pop up to like 400, and then you're going to have to choke everything out and then restart it again. And yeah.
I don't want to be that tied to all the time.
Yeah. And that was the same. I bought one of the Komodos, the big green egg clone. And
they had a bunch of those at a local Ace Hardware.
Yeah, to babysit
they had like
it.
every single model. They had a tiny one all the way up. There was like $2,600. The thing was massive. It was massive.
Like that had to babysit, and like then you start building a microcontroller to do the fan so it could maintain temperature or not, and like that was a Saturday where you could sit outside with a beer and just sit there and watch the thing. And then I bought the electric smoker, and that was like set it and forget it, except that it tends to go through wood fairly quickly.
Yeah, if you use the chips, it'll burn through the chips.
Which does. But the only thing that I like about that, it can do cold smoking. So I don't have to turn on any heating element, nothing. I can just smoke with the add-on.
Right.
And you can do heat and smoke. But I picked up the Davy Crockett Green Mountain Grills smoker, and that is fantastic.
Is that a pellet or
pellet? Yeah, it's about 30 pounds of pellets, which we've put stuff in there for 5-6 hours, and not used half the thing.
Yeah, if you're low and slow, I find you don't burn. If you crank it up to 500, you're going to burn through some pellets.
Oh, sure.
But not get as much smoke, because they combust so well. You don't get as much smoke at higher temperatures. It's interesting.
Yeah, I made that mistake. When I bought the pellet grill, I bought 120 pounds of pellets, thinking, I was like, I don't know how much I'm going to use during 6.5 hours of smoking ribs. And I think I may have used like 5 or 10 pounds tops.
Yeah,
now you're set.
It doesn't go bad. Yeah, I don't think it goes, as long as you store it in a nice, cool, dry place, you're good.
Yeah, it should be good. I think I'll be good for buying pellets for probably about the next year, with the exception of if I want to get a different flavor, because they are all the same flavor or type of wood, whatever you want to call it, because that's all the store had the day I bought the smoker.
Yep. The one that is nice about mine is that it runs off of 12 volts.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
And it comes with a really long cord that you can plug into the cigarette adapter of your car. So you could use it for like tailgating. We used it when we went camping.
Yep.
Because we're boondocking, we're off grid, and everything is 12 volts. So I could just go plug it into the battery for the camper.
Nice.
And we did an amazing set of baby back ribs in the campsite. Like everybody was riding on their bikes and walking by and like wondering why the smoke is pouring out of our campsite. And then you see them drooling, and they're like, "No, you can't come for dinner."
I'm smoking like 8 racks of ribs this coming Sunday.
Yeah, with your family, you need about 8 racks of ribs.
Well, we're having people over.
Yeah,
for a party. So
I had a lot of my family over, and I smoked 6 racks of ribs. So
if you stack them vertically, if you stand them up in a rib rack, you can get a lot on there. It's nice.
Yeah.
I learned about those about 3 days ago when I was looking for a rack to make beer can chicken on Amazon. So unfortunately, I did it the hard way. Hence the reason I was so precise with what I was saying about having to babysit the traditional smoker.
But Traeger makes a chicken throne, and it's just a ceramic thing, and you pour the beer in, but it flares out so your chicken's not falling over. That's what I use. It comes out good. Yeah, it comes out really good.
Nice.
I like the beer can chicken.
I've not had it, but it looks looks really interesting.
Nice.
I like talking about smoking meat as a kind of a nice break from OSINT.
Is there really ever a break from it?
Right.
The beautiful thing with the pellet, so that's one thing that I do actually like about it. It's like, oh, well, I'm sitting outside with this pellet smoker. It's doing its thing. okay, cool. I can control it via the app if I want to. If I'm not actively having to sit down there and spray it with vinegar, I could be up here in my office doing whatever.
Yep.
Or if I'm stuck sitting out there, a lot of the stuff that I would do from an OSINT perspective, like, yeah, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of like command line tools and other tools I could use, but there's just as much stuff that I can go digging through in the browser, and I could still be collecting down there. And, you know, I don't ever really have to truly turn it off if I don't really want to. But I am trying to strike a better work-life balance and take a little bit more time away from my OSINT hobbies and what have you, and be more concise, so that I do have a better balance to prevent burnout.
When does the book officially come out?
I don't have the exact date. My stint in the hospital kind of slowed things down because I've got a couple of changes that I've had to send back to No Starch. So I don't have an exact date, but I do anticipate that it will be in print by the end of the year.
Nice.
The original date was going to be this month, but you know, obviously medical issues said nope. Otherwise, nope, you're wrong.
Nope, you're wrong.
It is available for pre-order on No Starch's website.
It is, and the last time I checked, if you use coupon code pre-order when ordering the physical copy of the book, not only do you get a discount, but you also get immediate access to the digital early release portion as well.
Yeah, that's something that they started doing. A lot of publishers started doing. Is you buy the pre-release and they'll give you access to the electronic copies, and you can read it as it's being edited, which is kind of nice.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's still going through the editing process. So, like, if you see something like they tell you that. So, that's awesome. Good stuff, Joe.
I'm very excited for it.
Yeah. Anything else other than the book? Anything else you want to plug?
I mean, I do my training through the Ascension, the OSINT.ion.com. I created a coupon code just before I came on, so anyone that's listening that wants to take any of my virtual live trainings between now and I think the last course is December 18th. I've got 6 different courses. I'll save you the gory details of what all the courses are, but if you use coupon code PSW15, you get 15% off. Beyond that, no, the only thing new in my world besides that is my team, we competed at the Trace Labs OSINT search party at DEFCON this last weekend, and for the 2nd year in a row, we won the OSINT search party missing person CTF.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thanks. Really exciting. You know, it's OSINT for good. It actually seeks to make a difference, and there's definitely some really good, there's some really high highs, and at times there's some really low lows in the competition, but it's definitely exciting, and I'm always happy to try to assist in finding people. But I think I'm done competing. I'm going to move over to the judging side from now on, and possibly mentor some teams from time to time as well.
Fantastic. Well, the links to the Ascension are in the show notes. Practical Social Engineering is the book. Joe, thank you very much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me.
With that, we'll take a short break. Coming up next, Kyle Avery. Stick around.